Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Powerhouse Entrepreneur Summit. Today, our very special guest is Toni Moore. Toni is a business and trademark lawyer that empowers authors, speakers, coaches, and consultants to leverage law to build and protect their business empires. This is something we all need to do. So, Toni, I want to welcome you to the summit.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Yay, so glad you're here. Today, Toni is going to be talking with us about 3 keys to securing your business, bank, and brand. So let's just jump right in because this is a very important topic that a lot of us don't think about all the time, which is, securing our businesses. So, Toni, tell us what are the key elements that should be addressed in a business succession plan?
Mm, that's good with regards to the business succession plan. If you always keep the end in mind, the
Mhm.
end meaning that one day you're going to retire from the business, or maybe you want to sell your business, or maybe you want to use the assets in your business to fund a family trust. But so when you're keeping that business succession plan in mind, you're building a business as opposed to just hustling for your next paycheck. That's a big difference. So when you're building a business, you already know that you have the business entity, but then you also know that if you're going to make it at least sellable, that
Mhm.
you at least have not just a business entity, but you also have business assets, and you're always keeping an eye on the asset valuation of the assets. And maybe because you want to be liked, known, seen, and heard, you may be leveraging with regards to succession planning. Who needs to like me or know me? Who maybe I can venture partner with? And then you always have to think, if you're going to sell it, then who could be your potential buyers who would be interested? Because maybe they could be a joint venture partner, or maybe you can be the type of influencer that attracts other people. So when you're thinking about, oh, at the end of this, I'm going to sell it. Like there was a record company, they just bought a company, a brand,
Mhm.
literally on Instagram for $56 million because the owner of that faceless brand built it up so that it's liked and known and seen. And not only that, but people see it as a resource that, and if you use it as a resource, or if you have like at least like 1,000 subscribers,
Mhm.
to your list and you're an influencer, but that type, you can get joint venture partners, even with regards to VC capitalists. Like, especially if you imagine if you turn your business into a brand that becomes an app that can be leveraged into other apps there. So
Oh,
that's the succession planning of the business, keeping the end in mind, not just saying, oh, I'm just going to be a doerpreneur. This is all I'm going to keep doing for coins. No, you're building
right.
a business that is something that you're going to sell or leverage. And I have helped clients like buy businesses, and I help clients like sell businesses. But one of the due diligence parts of the legal side is, okay, so what's the asset? What is it worth? What's the goodwill, with
Mhm.
regards to it? What intellectual property can now be transferred over to the new buyers, and, that type of stuff. So that's one of the big keys, is to just make sure that the company is sellable, by building the business and not just doing the business.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us kind of fall into that trap of just doing the business. We don't really think about the end. We don't think that we're going to maybe sell this one day. But do you think that we should be looking at partnerships like as we go along, or at some point when we get to a certain, just a certain point in our business, should we be looking at more joint partnerships and things like that?
Well, I mean, there is no should necessarily in the
Yeah,
legal, except thou should not get in trouble or or get into a lawsuit. But
right.
there's a lot of people who do leverage partnerships,
Hmm.
whether it's going to be an equity partnership because maybe you can exchange someone's intellectual property for the equity in your business. So that's an equitable partnership. Some people leverage their relationship partnerships because maybe you have a bigger brand and you're an influencer. And maybe if I tag into the equity of your influence, then maybe I can now leverage my message and my movement to capture the appearance, the capture the attraction of certain audiences, right? So that helps me, will like help me make my money moves and
Mhm.
helps you as well, because now you have equity, so you have an interest. Or sometimes people just have, a partnership because it's an operational. Like we like each other. Maybe we're doing the same thing. Maybe I'm doing legal, maybe you're doing marketing, and you're helping me. And then so many different areas, so much so that now we're like, you know what? It just makes sense to create a joint venture together where we can help other people do the X, Y, and Z, whatever that particular snapshot of the business is. So if I always say, if it makes money and it makes sense, then of
Yes.
course a venture partner is good. But I never do it without paperwork. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
that's true. That's
Exactly.
yeah.
And as a former divorce attorney,
Mhm.
I always think about, if there is litigation, or if there is a business divorce,
Mhm.
who owns what. So that's where the paperwork, having kind of like, business nuptials in place, where you agree to do certain things, I agree to do certain things. We have a conversation with regards to the capitalization of the business, have a conversation with regards to the equitable interest of our intellectual property, and then even have a conversation if someone, God forbid, dies or goes to jail or have a divorce or have a bankruptcy. What does that look like, so that you're not in business, God forbid, with intestate heirs? I mean, that would be a whole different conversation,
I don't
but
know
you
that.
don't necessarily want to be in business with your partner's in-laws, or with your partner's intestate heirs, because they did not put a personal succession plan in place.
Oh, wow, that's a lot to think about. It
Yes,
really is. Because,
yes,
a lot of times we just focus on, well, is this an aligned partnership? We focus on those things and we're not looking at the legal part of it, the things that we really should be paying attention to for the long haul, because things can happen, things can come up and that then we don't have control because we don't have anything paperwork in place.
that
So it's
part.
like, yeah,
Absolutely.
wow.
Yeah. So the alignment is good and the mindset is good, because, I can think of a couple of clients, and they're like, I started a separate business because I did not want to partner with a particular person in my main business. And I'm like,
Mhm.
hey, at least they had the wherewithal to think about, do I really have an alignment, or just a money goal? They have a money goal, but not an alignment. Or some people just aren't good partners because they're, I don't like to say it, but they're tacky in business. So if they're tacky and they're set for a lawsuit, I always want to remind folks about this term of art called joint and severable liability, meaning
Mhm.
that if we become partners, and if you do something wrong, I'm responsible for you.
Mhm.
And if I do something wrong, you're responsible for me, because it's joint and severable partnership. Now, if you advocate for your own security by negotiating a contract, you will have an indemnity clause in that agreement that says, look, you're going to do the best you can. You're going to get some insurance. You might even get some fidelity bond insurance. But at the end of the day, if I ever end up in a lawsuit because you were tacky in business, then you're going to pay me back, that type of thing. Those are
Right.
conversations, that most people don't want to have a conversation about.
Exactly.
But I'm like, you don't want to have this conversation in the midst of litigation.
Mm. Yeah, that would be all that. It just wouldn't be a good feeling or a good look. It just, yeah, I agree. I agree. So say we want to, because I'm hoping that we are all in business, building legacies and things like that, of course, hopefully. So we want to pass a business on to a future generation, a new ownership, like what strategies exist for that?
So in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and soon to be New
Mhm.
York, I do get a chance to do trust and estate planning, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we're doing a life and legacy planning and things of that nature. Um, Unfortunately, when it comes to building generational wealth and passing on a business, by the time the first generation hits, 70% of the interest is bankrupted.
Hmm.
And I realized that, because I'm kind of doing it myself. I came from rock bottom with no bottoms, and I landed myself into middle class, but then I didn't teach my children how to be hungry or
Mhm.
how to work. So there's a lot of the next generation that do not get their mind right. They don't have financial literacy training. They're not necessarily shadowing their parents or their grandparents on the duties and responsibilities of the business. So if you are thinking, hey, this business is going to be something that is going to be a seed for generational wealth, then I would strongly suggest that you get your children or family members involved in the business so that they can see what it is to manage it. They can understand who the competitors are, who the venture partners are, that people see them as also as the face of the family business, and it's not just your face. Because when it gets passed down to strangers, essentially, people don't know them, they don't like them, they don't trust them, and especially if it's a service provider company. And then also having, with regard to, I like to think of it like the family advisory board, where you're bringing them into the conversation. So they're not just being receivers of the revenue, but they're also being fiduciaries of the conversation in the business as to, hey, what's next, and what's the next level, and how are we going to leverage the brand, and are we going to joint venture partner? Are we going to use things as collateral? Put them in a seat, even if it's a assistant seat, as what the CEO mentality is. And then also with regards to have that paperwork, I always look at agreements as like continual conversations. So if you put an agreement in place, such as a legacy contract in place, what does that look like? And that would be like, okay, we're going to entrust this business and we're going to assign the operations over to the family trust. Now, who's going to be the co-trustee or a trustee? Who will be a survivor trustee, just in case something happens to the original trustee? Can children become trustees? And if so, what would make them eligible? Do they have to go to school? Do they have to buy real estate? Do they have to run the company for at least 2 years? Like, that's the beautiful thing with regards to advocating for your legacy with contractual negotiations, and also setting up a trust and estate plan where it's not ubiquitous, where someone just taking it off the internet and say, when you turn 25, you get a third of the family trust, and at 50 you get a third, and then at 65 you get a third, and it depletes it. Or would it be a continual conversation, kind of like the Rockefellers? They were like, you know what, this is a family legacy, we are building this company, and this is the interest, and this is the assets, and this is our donor advised funds, and this is the real estate, and this is the endeavors. And then, if people are eating from it, that's the beautiful thing about trust, we don't know. Like if it was in a will, we would know. We could just go to their surrogacy court or their registered wills and find out what exactly was said. But with a trust, a family trust, even a family dynasty trust, no one knows except for the family members.
So is there anything you need to have in place before moving into the trust, or is it something you could just get at any time?
You can get that at any time. It's a
Anytime.
conversation that's being had.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, I know some people go to non-lawyers, but I remind people that trusts are not something that, it does not protect your assets. A trust is literally like a trust agreement between the grantor and trustees and beneficiaries as to what they need to do or not do to receive a benefit from the trust. So literally it's like, okay, once you hit 25, or when you go to college, then we'll pay for your medical and your life and your desires, and give you and give you an allowance, so to speak. That's all written in, because that's a conversation. But before, of course, you always got to think about, okay, like who's going to be the trustee, and will I have more than one trustee, or will I have a board of trustees, and who's going to be the beneficiaries, and what if one of my children have children? Will grandchildren be able to step in? Because not all trusts bring in grandchildren, and will I have companies, or will I be like, what is it? Marie Presley, and she literally funded her trust with 2 policies, one for like 25 million and one for 5 million. So she funded her trust, a $30 million trust. She had assets that she received from her father. But and it's not just celebrities that's doing it. People come to me and be like, I'm thinking about getting a universal life insurance. Get it. Talk to an insurance person. I'm thinking about getting like a permanent life insurance policy. Okay, get it. I'm thinking about putting 10% of the income from my LLC and funding it with a trust. Those are all strategies that when you have a plan in mind, because I know at least in 2023, everybody's talking about, I want to be a generational wealth. I want to create generational wealth. And I'm like, okay, well, you got to generate income
Yeah.
so that you can generate wealth. And then have a game plan, because that was what we learned. The difference between the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers is the Vanderbilts had a promise agreement, pinky promise, and the Rockefellers put it in writing. So if anything, you definitely need to put it in writing, and you got to hold the beneficiaries accountable.
Wow, that just takes having structure and organization to a whole nother level. Because, like, like you said in the beginning, like these are things that we don't often think about
Yes.
because we don't really look at long term. We just kind of like we're just doing the business,
Yes.
like you said,
Doerpreneurs.
doing for doing. Yes. So I love this part because we're talking about protection so much. What about our intellectual property? Like, what types of intellectual property are most important for businesses to register and protect?
I work a lot with author, speaker, coach, or subject matter expert. I'm like a subject matter expert with regards to compliance and business ethics, so to speak. So when you're thinking about what you can teach, it's like, okay, what do you do? Even in our jobs, once upon a time, we were always doing something. Like I was a senior compliance person at the federal level, and I was always looking at how people like handle their business and did business compliance with employee benefit plans. Well, intellectual property is fiduciary finesse on how to keep your assets out of trouble when it comes to employee benefit plans. Like literally, you teach what you know, and then whether it's a video series or a written series, then you go to copyright.gov and you register your ownership rights into it. So if you created a book, your ownership rights in the book. If you created choreography, ownership rights in the choreography that you created. I was for 20 years before before I fell upon entrepreneurs. I guess I was working with entrepreneurs. They were called musicians and singers and performers, right? And a lot of them do not necessarily respect their intellectual property enough because it's a gift. It's something that they do naturally, but they're not understanding until somebody takes it from them that it was their intellectual property. And as of 2019, without the receipt of ownership, it's very hard to establish that someone stole your ship. You need the receipts, and the receipt is a copyright registration, right? So for copyright registrations of your ownership of the course, of a keynote speech, you would hate that someone literally control, alt, and delete your keynote speech or your Thinkific program, but that's where the copyright ownership registration comes into play. Whereas with regards to a trademark is where you have the trademark is the name of like your program, the name of your conference or summit, the name of like a makeup line, the name of your consulting, business, the name of like your church. For some people, they have a ministry. But if you don't file a trademark registration, an application to register it to so that it can go up on the US PTO, that's a uspto.gov, then don't nobody really know. So yeah, you have common law interest in it, but always remember having a common law interest and having federal protection is two different things. I saw somebody, they were like so happy that, they filed for a trademark protection in their home state. That's nice. But now we live in a global economy. Now we live in national. Soon as you put it up on Instagram or Facebook or X, that used to be Twitter, or even LinkedIn, there could be someone else that you may pretty much kind of like I don't want to say provoke them to steal your stuff, but you can pretty much enlighten them on the possibility of, wow, I like that name. I'm tempted could take a derivatives, like certain things, like with regards to it, people will take a derivative. Now, certain things we can't take a derivative of Louis Vuitton because it's been around. Christian Dior has been around. Some of them have like established brands. But as you can see, what Kim Kardashian did with Skins. Now it's like Skins by Kim Kardashian, even though there was an African American woman who was doing something similar.
Right.
So, so I always say take ownership of the brand.
Mhm.
That's the biggest flex, is not just filing a registration, but marketing it. That's why I want you to make it so remarkable that it's trade marketable, that people like it, they know it, they trust it, they see the brand, they see the ring on the brand, and they immediately think of you. You don't
Yeah.
have something like that, then it becomes problematic, because then someone will take a derivative of that and they'll register it, and then they can possibly send you a cease and desist when you try to expand your brand beyond what it was when they first filed for theirs.
Oh no, that would be terrible. I
It
mean,
happens. And the
yeah.
only thing people can do is cry on social media. And I'm like, no, no, no. We're not crying. We creators. So creators, one of the things, you got to create your own security as well. And you use the law as both the sword and the shield.
Hmm. Wow. So we should basically be trademarking like everything.
I would say trademark everything, but not
Yeah.
everything. But everything that you don't want someone to take, because I'm a creator
Okay.
by nature. So if you saw my domain closet, you'd be like, Tone, for real? But not everything went into fruition. But the
Mhm.
things that I expanded and was like, yo, this is like really good. And I can now intellectualize this property and properly by leveraging it and licensing it and turning it into a certification. When you can think outside of the two-step, not just the name it and claim it, but the monetization and the monitoring so that you can protect your profits.
Mhm.
Now that's when you hit a name that you'd be like, no, I work too hard. And
Yeah.
sometimes we work too hard for certain things. Like you building a brand, you building a conference, you're building a summit. When you work too hard for something, you don't want somebody to literally just control, alt, and delete, or take a derivative and put black or the or woman on the back of your brand and co-brand with you, and not without even so much as a thank you. Now that's the brand that you need to protect.
Tony, you giving us the business.
I just, I need to just get the business, because sometimes I hear,
Yeah.
well, Penny, I only do what I know. So anytime I get a chance to have a conversation with my fellow sisterpreneurs, I'm like, look, I need you to secure your business, your brand,
Right.
and your bank.
Right. I mean, you got to get serious about it. It's yours, protect it. So, what are some of the biggest compliance risks that businesses commonly face?
Well, it really depends on the business, right?
Okay.
So one of the things, like I work with home health agencies,
Mhm.
so they already have a billing issue if they don't have a policy problem. You know what I mean? And they have an issue when they don't pay their employees. Problem. Department of Labor is all over them. Now that is for home health, especially when they're starting to do work with regards to Medicaid. Okay, because anytime that there's aid and they're working with a governmental agency, then there's the OIG, the Office of in General Counsel, that they have to worry about, and the Inspection General that they have to worry about, and that's a problem. So that's one. When they're nonprofits, one of the biggest risks that they have is really not treating their nonprofit organization like a business, where they don't have, with regards to contractual agreements with their hirees,
Mhm.
independent contractors, where they don't necessarily have a formalized conflict of interest policy in place. Like,
Mhm.
can they work with you or not work with you, with regards to your board of directors, right? And what policies do you have in place with regards to reimbursements? What policies do you have in place with regards to donations? What policies do you have in place with regards to whistleblowers? Now,
Mhm.
for my author, speaker, coaches, one of the biggest things that I see that they do is they believe in giving the sisterpreneur hookup. Like, oh, that's just my friend. And they're doing business without boundaries. And,
Okay.
and we can't have business without boundaries. If you're going to bring someone into your book, your book compilation, you know what I mean, your anthology, have them put it in agreement with regards to setting boundaries on what can they do with regards to the book, what can they say, can they disparage other people? Because here's the thing, when they're bringing their business into your business, then it becomes a joint and severable issue. So you got to make sure that everyone's on the right page on how do they operate with you. Even when you're dealing with the summit with regards to it, you're smart having an interview, because by law, with regards to interview, you own like the sound recording, so that's a beautiful thing when you own the sound recording.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're like, Tone, just submit one of your speeches. Okay, well, now I own the sound recording of the speech and I'm
Mhm.
going to give you a license to use it, but what does that look like? Or sometimes people
Mhm.
are like, oh, we can just JV partner with each other and create something. Okay, what does that look like? What if I bring in all the substance and you just bring in the bells and whistles? What does that look like if we no longer like each other? Or
Mhm.
if now you brought in maybe a producer who said, hey, I want you guys to come on board, but now I'm mad because I brought in 99% and you just brought in a producer and you did no work, but you now want 50% of the income. So one of the biggest problems I do see with regards to authors, speaker, coaches, subject matter experts, even I was a former adjunct professor, even adjunct professors is literally like making money without boundaries. Like imagine having money gasms without boundaries.
Yes.
Imagine having gasms without protection and what's going to happen, because it's the same thing when you're working with people who you like and know, but you don't really know. You only know what they show and present to you, and you don't know the rest of it. So
Good
that's
point.
where we have to understand and appreciate that you definitely need an agreement. I always look at paper as prophylactics that protects your assets. So you
Yes.
definitely have to do business with boundaries.
With boundaries. Yes. 2024, we are stepping it up. We're getting serious.
Yes,
And yeah, because I mean, I've seen it happen too many times. We have partnerships and they fall apart, and then it's just ugly because nothing is in place
right.
and you haven't protected anything. And it's like, now what? It's just
Now what?
yeah, it's just an ugly situation. So we got to work smarter in
Like
2024.
literally. Like
Yes.
now what? Because I get some where two friends got together and they started a business, because I did a litigation as trial attorney with regards to it, and they
Mm,
literally hated each other, and we had to keep them separated because the feelings got involved.
right.
But the fact of the matter was they weren't forward thinking as to what could possibly happen. Because when we're all happy, that's why you gotta have business nuptials. Because when you're all
Yes.
happy, you're thinking about money gasms and celebrations and looking good and all that stuff. But then if when you realize that you're doing more of the work,
Mhm.
or then you realize that someone just shut you out of the bank account, but you're the one who brought in 75%, or then someone decided that they wanted to leverage the brand that you came up with and they hurried up and filed the trademark application,
Mm.
but you don't have an agreement in place. So now you got a lawsuit. And I always say that registration is cheaper than litigation, but
Mhm.
proactive planning is cheaper than the problems that will happen because you did not advocate for yourself. And the best flex is using your mouth and using your negotiations
Mm.
and thinking that, you know what, I have a right to be at this table. I'm not so happy and grateful that someone offered because you were smart enough to be invited. Once somebody invites you, they already know. So you need to
Right.
acknowledge what they already know, but now you got to protect what they know and you got to advocate for your own success. Because if you don't, you get into the or at the wrong table with the wrong people, someone will control, alt, and delete you.
Mm-mm. We don't want that to happen.
Exactly.
Oh, wait, we have covered so much, Tony. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Did we leave anything out? Or did we?
Um, Let me think. No, I think we ate,
We
as the young
ate,
people
didn't
would say.
we? Oh my goodness. This was wonderful. Thank you for like
Mhm.
pouring into us because these are some things that we really need to think about. It's beginning of the year. It's like, let's get it together. Let's get our act together and let's, fully protect our businesses and everything we own. Anything that means something to us, let's protect it.
Absolutely.
So I love
Absolutely.
this. Yes.
Absolutely. Because we're already doing the work. You're doing
Right.
the work. You probably went to coaching. You probably are a part of a mastermind. You probably actually not just purchase the class, but actually finish the class. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you're doing all of the things, and people already know, like, especially I'm an African American woman. So they
Mhm.
see us and they just see us as their banking potential, because oh, we'll give them another app, or oh, we'll give them another class, or oh, we'll give them another training, or oh, we'll give them another grant. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
they'll put all of the things in place. But now my thinking is, at this point, it's like I'm looking at being over 50. I'm looking at my retirement, because I'm not hustling forever, and I need a big forever fund. I wasn't a trust fund baby, but I'm darn sure going to be a trust fund lady. Okay. So
Right.
I'm making sure that some of the money that I am bankrolling will go into the trust fund for me. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I'm not working. I see too many people, African American, working after 73 because they didn't have their own trust fund set aside for them.
Mhm.
And then I get too many of my colleagues who are asking me about their parents, because now they're looking at Medicaid, and they're like,
Mm.
oh, if mama's house, or, and I'm like, there's a 5-year look back period. So
Mhm.
I can't counsel you on how to evade Medicaid rules and
Right.
regulations, but you have to do a lot of stuff before you hit 65. We can't just be so happy and grateful, and then the age comes upon us, and then we're like, oh, I only did what I knew. No, you're going to have to look at business as a game. And my preferred game of choice is the chess game. So you're
Mhm.
not doing it all by yourself. It's not just a queen on the board. There's a queen and a king and a bishop,
Yes.
and there's pawns that you have to make a decision on how to move. And so if this is new, I always say new levels. It's not new
Mhm.
levels, new devils. It's new levels, new lessons, so that you
Yeah.
can, yeah, manifest new legacies. That's where we're at this
Mm.
point.
Well said. I'm telling you. So, Tony, tell me, what do you have for our attendees today?
Yes. So what I do have is, I have this guidebook. It's called Protect Your Empire,
Mhm.
because that at least covers at least the several avenues and worksheets that I put in place. So
Mhm.
one, it's something that I gift to my clients when we're doing the estate and trust anyway, because they got to look at the business as an asset, but we also look at the trademark as an asset. And we look at the copyright as an asset, and then they can, now that they see it, now they can decide whether or not, hey, I'm going to utilize this, I'm going to sell it. Or no, I'm going to utilize this and I'm going to sign it over to a trust.
Mhm.
But when you at least see what you have, so you take inventory of what you have, and then you start making decisions as to what will you do with this. Will you continue to build it up and build up your business so you can sell it? Like, I help people buy and sell businesses. And one of the keys in buying and selling a business is that it has to be so bankable, and you
Mhm.
have to, that people will actually want to buy into it. We don't
Right.
just buy something. We want to buy something that we can leverage in our own empire. So
Right.
that's where it's the Protect Your Empire. I like it. I liked it so much. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna call it, I'm gonna give it a name for a program. And you know what? I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna gift it to my trust and estate people,
Mhm.
because most people are not thinking of their business as an asset.
That's true.
But when you start thinking of your business and your intellectual property as an asset, then yeah, of course, I used to do financial planning. Of course, financial planners are going to tell you about what? Stock and mutual funds and money
Yeah.
market. But when you start looking at your business as an asset, you get a
Mhm.
better rate of return, because you're working on it and you're working in it. So you might as well protect it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. You don't do all this work for nothing, to lose it or whatever, it's like it has to
exactly.
make sense. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's
Okay.
where, and you'd be like, oh, I see why you use it.
Right.
So it's protect your empire. Absolutely.
Yeah. So where can we connect with you?
Oh, well, on social media, more so on Instagram.
Okay.
You can find me as the Legal Diva. And that's where I'm usually dropping, like, I like to call it like legalese unlocked. So lawyers speak in legalese. So I just try to unlock the legal so that you can, at least, so it's no longer complex. It's just something that you're like, oh, I get it. This is the issue. This is the rule. These are
Mhm.
the actions I can take so that I can pretty much secure myself and my business and my legacy. So we do the Legalese Unlocked, but it's under Legal Diva because, at the end of the day, I talk law all day, every day. I see
Mhm.
law not just as a lawyer, but being a serial business owner who operated in nonprofit and also as an adjunct professor at one point, who
Mhm.
also was, did a lot as a senior investigator for the federal government. And we were doing senior investigations of trusts and employee benefits and businesses. I'm like, hey, I might as well help the next generation of entrepreneurs to actually help them start right, get right, or at least stay right in their
Oh,
business.
that's right.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. We need you so much. So with I thank you so much, Tony. You have given us such a wealth of information.
Oh, good.
Like, yeah, yeah.
Good.
You've been
Hopefully
a
not too much, and hopefully, they will partake in your replay offer because I always say note takers are for money makers, but it's
Mhm.
something about when you get newfound information, you need the repetition.
It's true.
Yeah,
It's true. Because we don't always get it on that first go. We gotta listen to it a couple times because yeah,
absolutely.
just to get
And
it.
then you're like, got it. Okay. Especially when you
Yeah.
start thinking of legacy and you start thinking of assets. It's like, what is she talking about? But
Right.
I tell sometimes I'm like, look, I've been doing this for a while. So I was like, but eventually your experience will catch up with the expertise. Maybe you might
Absolutely.
inherit something, or maybe you
Mhm.
might hear something, or maybe you might be like, oh, someone wants to JV partner with me. And why are they gifting me all of this stuff? Well, I learned from one of my clients when people start gifting you, that's
Mhm.
because you're the money maker.
Mm.
They just want to keep you on their platform.
Yes.
So if you're not paying for it and they're opening the doors, you are the money maker. So you better advocate for your success by making sure that you have the business in place and you have an agreement that sets boundaries and parameters.
Love that. Very well said.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for
You're
everything.
you're very welcome.
We'll
Thank you
be
for having
listening.
me.
Yes, this was so fun. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're just great, Tony. We really appreciate you. So for the attendees, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Make sure you follow Tony, follow up with her because you're gonna need this stuff for your business. I mean, it's no way around it. I mean, you can or you can't, but you want to protect your business. You want to be serious about it. So make sure you follow up with Tony. It should get you right. Right. Okay. Any last words, Tony?
No, I
You good?
hopefully it wasn't too much,
Yeah.
hopefully this was information that, I'm not expecting you to know it like a lawyer, but
Mhm.
eventually I do want it to penetrate you so that you can at least start appreciating what you bring to the table.
Right.
We're not so happy and grateful that someone invited us. No, it's our intellectual property. It's our
Yeah.
opportunity to build our legacy of wealth by just creating an LLC. So we've created the LLC. Now it's time to turn that LLC into long lasting currency by appreciating the intellectual property you bring to the table and also setting the boundaries and parameters in place so that you can protect your empire throughout the in between.
There it is. All right, y'all. We'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning
Thank
in.
you.